Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Good afternoon and welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host. Today I am delighted to welcome to the show John Kensett from Dolleymores. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you very much, Chris.
So, John, what I'd like to do, I say this with every interview, what I'd love to do is, for the benefit of everybody listening, is just do a quick snapshot of your sort of CV, if that's okay, education, and what's ultimately led you to become part of the sort of Silverstone business region. So is that okay if I just quickly do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And as per normal, Google, LinkedIn has been very helpful. If there's anything in here that's incorrect, do correct me. So, academic-wise, degree in physics from Nottingham University.
That's right.
And then following that, you had a few years in industry before joining Dolleymores, which is where you are still. And so you joined them in 1989 and sort of progressed through to partner level. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so in relation to Dolleymores as a firm, for those that haven't heard of you before or yet, what is it that sort of Dolleymores do? What do you specialise in? And what's the sort of history? When did Dolleymores sort of get established, and what's sort of been its sort of journey today?
Dolleymores is a firm of patent and trademark attorneys, and that's all we do. Well, we do intellectual property, so patents, trademarks, protecting designs, copyright, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we're patent and trademark attorneys. We're not lawyers. We're not solicitors as such. It's a different branch of the law. We have different qualifications, different route.
Okay.
And all of us, well, certainly as patent attorneys, that have technical skills, technical qualifications, hence the physics degree.
Yeah.
The firm was started in, I believe, 1969, because next year is our 50th anniversary.
Ah, good.
So we're busy planning a big party for that. Hopefully some of the members may be invited to.
Great.
And it was firmed by one guy. The full name for the firm is Saunders and Dollymore. Mm-hmm. Dolleymores is a kind of trading style.
Okay.
It was formed by a guy called Harry Saunders back in 1969. Small beginnings in one room in North London, and gradually built up over the years. They moved out to Rickmansworth, and then a year or two before I joined, they moved to some of our present premises in Watford, and gradually the firm has grown over the years. Well, we now have 6 partners, 20 staff, and have 2 large sort of Edwardian buildings in central Watford.
Lovely. With
a huge car park that's very convenient.
Good.
And we act for local firms in St Albans, Watford, lots all around the country.
Silverstone.
There's many in Silverstone, Milton Keynes, Northampton area, and worldwide as well.
And what's a sort of typical client business look like? What do they, presumably they're involved in clearly tech and innovation because they're trying to protect their sort of intellectual property or brand or design. So who do you work with as a sort of idea?
We work, because we do patents and trademark, we work with pretty much any kind of business. Okay. On the patent side, it's everyone from the little guy with a working from his garage with a little invention right up to major multinationals, major corporates, many in the USA and Japan, but all sorts of sizes of company in the UK.
Yeah.
Obviously on the branding and trademark side, we work with any company that has a brand and a trademark that needs protecting.
And so from your personal sort of background, so I've got here that in 1987 you became a chartered patent attorney. You worked within the Department of Major UK Defence and Electronic Company.
Yep.
trademark attorney, European patent attorney as well. So, from a sort of qualification perspective, you've sort of got all the ticks. And presumably, obviously, other partners in your firm have also. So, from a sort of a knowledge perspective, you guys are, well, what it appears is the sort of go-to firm.
Yeah, we have a range of disciplines that we're expert in. Mine is the physics or the mechanics based, and computer software, IT, that kind of field. We also have people who are skilled in sort of trained mechanical engineers, chemists, chemical engineering, and even some sort of loose biotech kind of specialists. So hopefully we work over the whole range of technologies.
Yeah. And sort of off air before we started recording, we sort of were chatting through, brand protection and firms that obviously were individuals that are sort of building brands and those that are, potentially fearful that, their brands could get ripped off, potentially inferior products could be sort of put on the market, potentially unsafe, said products. How do you guys help those types of individuals and businesses sort of protect their brand?
Well, we can help them to actually, first of all, the important thing is, particularly when you're starting up a brand, to make sure no one else is using a similar sort of mark, similar brand, or similar sort of things. And all too often, clients starting up see that as a fairly low priority. They start up building up their trade and their brand, and then suddenly they find they're getting a letter from a lawyer saying, "You got to stop using this name." So if they just do some checks in the first place, you can do initial checks are really cheap and really simple. At least check that the clever trademark, the clever branding you're going to use is actually available for you.
How would they check? Are there links that we could potentially provide them in the show notes?
There are some links for basic checks to the trademark registry in London or the European trademark registry, and then for more detailed ones, we do that all the time.
Okay,
so just contact us.
Okay, fine. So that's a service that you guys can provide at ground level, just actually before you even kick off and start spending a lot of money and time and resource developing this. Let's actually just double check that you're not going to be infringing someone else's.
Yeah, absolutely. And once they are in business, once they have set up and their name, think about protecting it. It can be very important to protect your name and your branding, if only for the reason that you touched upon, that if you've got building up a good reputation in a product or a service, and then someone starts up doing a similar thing down the road with a similar name, they could be taking business from you. They could also be selling shoddy goods or really poor service. And if people somehow confuse that with you, that can mean big trouble for you. So if you at least protect your brand so you can go to them and say, "Hey, stop using my brand," it gives you a position of strength.
And presumably, when it comes to securing patents, there must be levels of suspicion around whether or not, putting something like that in place can actually provide them with protection. Do you come across that? Do people potentially ever raise a question to say, actually, is it worth doing this?
Yeah, all the time. People say, "Oh, I'm not so sure about patents because, you spend lots and lots of money and it takes time. And at the end of the day, someone's just got to change one tiny thing and then get around your patent." Well, the answer to that is no. If you've got a well-drafted patent, a good patent attorney will always draft your patent in a very broad way that it covers all sorts of variations of your product and also future-proofs it as well. So we could kind of refer to things in a way that aren't so specific. For example, if your invention uses, a nut and a bolt, we won't necessarily talk about it as that. We'll talk about it as a fastening means, but we'll then talk about any method of fastening the two bits together. So a good patent should protect you against people who are taking the broad concept of your invention. In general, people won't be able to just make a small change and get around it.
Okay. Presumably, and this is me learning, can you adapt and evolve patents in the future? So can you, if you wanted to change it because part of the product or solution changed as part of the development process, this is definitely for me learning. Do you have to submit a brand new application, or can you a bolt a bit in, or how does it work?
So there's a certain time that there's certainly inbuilt delays in patent applications that within a year or so from the first time you file a patent, you can make changes to it. If you make developments to your idea, in order to get a patent, an invention has to be new, and it also has to be what's called, it has to have an inventive step, which means it mustn't be obvious to someone who's skilled in that particular field or art. So if you make improvements in order to protect those, they do have to be kind of clever in their own right, above what you've done already.
Okay, and presumably at that sort of stage or ahead of that, you could then as a firm go in and provide counsel and direction on really how they need to be
absolutely
documenting that and then submitting it to the appropriate body.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do. People come to us with their idea. We then try to work out what the essence of that idea is, what the sort of invention is, which sometimes isn't actually what the client thinks it is.
Okay.
We have to work out what the invention in the abstract is. We then write up the patent based on that, and we then submit that to the patent office and then go through the process of trying to get a patent for them. And then we can advise them whether they are too similar to other people's products, and give general sort of advice. We also started to do quite a few IP audits for people as well, where we go in and check what IP they've got, what they could have, both patents and trademarks. And there are schemes by which the patent office, the government via the patent office, will actually pay for most of the costs of one of these IP audits for clients, which is actually really useful for sort of SMEs.
And is there a sort of typical length of time it takes to get an application through for a patent?
For a regular patent, you are generally talking a few years to get a patent from beginning to end to actually get it granted. Generally, a British inventor or applicant will start with a British patent application, and there is a so-called priority period by which you have 1 year after you filed your initial patent application to extend that if you want to include other countries. And there's various sort of routes for doing that. So it can take a few years. There are ways of accelerating it if you need to. And more recently, we've been filing patents for a slightly different purpose, which is for a tax purpose. We may come on to later.
We can talk about that.
There's something that's called the patent box. It was first thought of by Gordon Brown, actually, in the tail end of the Labour government, and was then brought in by George Osborne, by which if you have a British patent covering a product, you can you only pay a low rate of corporation tax, just 10% on that, as opposed to, I think it's 19% at the moment, corporation tax. And that's a whole new way of looking at patents, because what it means is that we can, if we know a client's interested in a patent box patent for tax purposes, we can actually write that patent fairly specifically, because all it has to do is to cover the product. We're not necessarily talking about it being nice and broad and covering other people's products, which actually means it's cheaper to do and much quicker, and we can get acceleration and we can get it granted often within a year.
And is that for existing IP or new or both?
It's always for new. A patent is always, at least in the UK, Europe, most of the world, you must apply for a patent before you tell the world, before you publish the idea at all, market it or sell it.
But to qualify for the tax break?
Qualify for the tax, it's the same thing.
In your case, it's got to be new as opposed to something that's existing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then presumably Dolleymores can provide advice and counsel over that tax.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do it all the time. And one benefit is if you've got even if it's a small part of a product that you're patenting, again, to go back to if it's a particular fastener that you've developed, a nut and bolt, if you're using that on a bigger product and it's an integral part of it, you can actually claim this tax relief, this patent box tax relief, on sales of that whole product, not just of that little tiny patented bit.
Okay.
So, a car manufacturer, if they develop a new steering wheel mechanism, let's say, they can actually get benefit if they're paying corporation tax in the UK on sales of a whole car.
Fantastic.
That uses that.
And would you say businesses are aware of this, or more information needs to be sort of shouted about?
There was a lot of talk about it a few years ago, but at the time the system was just being phased in, and it wasn't used that much. We're finding more and more these days it's being used more and more, and it's something that we're trying to educate and inform people about. And
and are accountants aware of this, or are you seeing any inquiries or questions coming in from firms of accountants, individuals asking for support? Or?
Yeah, accountants are becoming more and more aware of this, and there are firms of accountants. There is a firm we work with who are kind of almost specialising in this field.
Okay.
But individual clients as well, some of them come to us and talk about these, and certainly all our own clients and everyone we meet, we do try to educate them and teach them about this.
Okay, and so presumably you would then sort of dovetail and work alongside someone's accountancy firm, their accountancy partner, to help deliver this and sort of provide a complementary service.
Absolutely, it's a dual thing. We will hopefully get the patent for someone, and then it's over to the accountants to do. And they are admittedly, I think, fairly complicated accountancy and formulas they have to work out. The actual accountancy is quite tricky, but the potential benefits are good.
Cool.
And in addition to that, there's the R&D tax credits that people can get.
Yeah, sure. And you've mentioned that Dolleymores don't just cover the UK, so you've got clients globally in Japan, I think you mentioned.
Absolutely, we do a lot of work in Japan. In fact, our biggest client is actually Japan's biggest maker, and in fact, the whole of Asia's biggest maker of nappies and sanitary products.
Right.
And they can file 50 plus patents in Europe each year.
Wow. On
developments to nappies and sanitary protection.
Sure. Wow. Okay. Bringing it back to motorsport, certainly with brand protection, you've worked with some quite well-known personalities in F1, and so have experience working in that sort of spotlighted area.
Yeah, our trademark department have quite a big sort of expertise in celebrity rights. Working with various sort of celebrities in all sorts of fields, including, as you say, someone famous in F1, and musicians as well. And we've worked for the estate of a very well-known dead rock star, protecting his name against all sorts of rip-off products throughout Europe.
Yeah, it must be rife, I think.
Absolutely, people want to associate their products with well-known names, and that celebrity or their estate have the rights to that and can
of course, protect
it. Yeah, but they've got to protect it in the first place. There's no such thing as a sort of celebrity right itself. You've got to get those rights by building up a portfolio of trademarks, whether it's the name, signature, photographs, whatever.
That's where you guys come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in relation to Silverstone, so we're here at the moment, so we're in the Innovation Centre and on Silverstone Park, and we've met because we're both members of the Silverstone Technology Cluster.
Yep.
My business Longhurst, yours Dolleymores. When did you join the STC and why?
Yeah, we joined at the end of last year, so it was only kind of November, December last year time. We joined because we have a lot of clients, a growing number of clients in this sort of area, and we know firms of lawyers and accountants in this area as well. And it was one of them who told us about the STC and the networking opportunities it gives, the opportunities to sort of get the name around and to meet people involved in what is often really cool cutting edge technology.
Yeah.
And we thought that sounds really interesting, so we joined it. It's small beginnings. We're still kind of finding our feet in the STC, but I've been going along to meetings, talking to people, making other meetings, chatting to people afterwards, and just generally getting the name known and the benefits of protecting IP and what you can do with your IP, which is, there's still an awful lot of ignorance around it at the moment.
And presumably you're the only one of your kind as such on site at the moment. There isn't anyone else that does what you do?
I think there may be one other firm of patent attorneys involved in the STC.
Okay, fine.
But there's not many of us in the country, so it's a pretty small
it's a niche market.
Yeah.
And for those listening that aren't part of the Silverstone region at the moment, but potentially thinking about either moving their business here or at least exploring, joining the STC as a member for commercial reasons, how would you encourage them, if you could, in a sort of a sentence? Why should they come here?
I think just in the sort of 9 months or so that we've been a member of it, we've found it really is a great community of businesses of all types, mainly in the sort of the high-tech growing area. And it's a brilliant place to go and talk to people Yes, to tell them about your products and to try to sell your products and services, but just generally to get a feel of what's going on. From my personal point of view, I love technology. That's one of the reasons I went into becoming a patent attorney. And it's fascinating talking to people about the work they're doing and some of the really cutting edge stuff that's been done, particularly around Silverstone on, obviously things like autonomous vehicles and battery technology and this kind of stuff. But for me, sometimes when you're a lawyer, you can get a bit, it's a bit sort of ivory towerish. You can sit there and wait for your clients to come in and you do the job, but it's great to actually get down there and find out what people are really doing, and from that work out what they really need from their IP, not just to get it for its own sake, but why they should be getting it and how it can benefit them and what they're actually really doing, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, I completely resonate with everything you're saying. I mean, that answer was fantastic and actually incredibly passionate for what's going on here. You're right. The sort of energy around the region is just phenomenal. The what's being developed is in some instances groundbreaking, and some of the previous interviews for Inside Silverstone we've been talking about obviously electric vehicles, autonomous, the future. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Absolutely.
And I think from a business's perspective, whether they're involved here or not yet, masses and masses of opportunity. So I can understand why you guys have sort of taken up membership. It's why Longhurst, my business, has done that. It's fantastic opportunities. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
What we'd love to do, if you're okay with this is what can often be the where I see people sort of sink in their chairs, is where I want to talk about John. I want to find out a little bit about John, so that we can humanise this a bit. Obviously very successful, clearly incredibly knowledgeable in your area of expertise, with no doubt about that, and very passionate about it, which is even more important. But I think for people that are listening, certainly for those that are either thinking about potentially getting into your sort of area of work, or certainly potentially exploring getting involved in sort of technology or engineering, which is obviously what we specialise in on within Silverstone at least. Just a bit more about your background. And so you live down in sort of Hertfordshire, in St Albans, and been there for quite a while, family and children and what have you?
Yeah, I was actually brought up there, went to school there, moved away for a few years, ended up back there.
Sure.
Yeah, I married one child who's now grown up and lives up in Sheffield.
Okay. Fine, and so you mentioned again prior off air that so your mum was so your family background, your mum and dad actually weren't involved actually in any capacity in engineering. So your mum was an actress and a singer.
That's right.
And your father was a saxophone player.
Yeah, that's right. And they're back in the 50s, they actually met when they were touring Germany with a dance band. My dad was playing sax with the band, and my mum was singing with the band, and that's where they met.
And so that's where, from a genetic perspective, you got your acting bug from. So so I read prior, obviously, as I do a bit of research, you're a bit of a thespian. So you do acting in St Albans.
Yes.
Yes. Bit of Shakespeare previously, and also you do something on Boxing Day. So what's the story there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I do both. I do quite a bit of amateur acting, a lot of Shakespeare stuff, in particular a sort of summer Shakespeare we do every year in the open air. That's cool. Great fun, particularly if it's wet. Yes. But I've also, the last few years, I've become a mummer. I've become a member of the St Albans Mummers.
What's that? Tell us about that.
Now, a mummer's play is a very traditional, it's several hundred years old sort of traditional play that the sort of labourers would do to raise a bit of cash at a certain time of year. So what we do is every Boxing Day, we do about 5 performances of this very silly play. It's very traditional, and then it's got characters like St George and a dragon and a Turkish knight and the Queen of Egypt. I play the doctor who has these magic potions that bring people back to life.
Okay.
And it's a very standard sort of traditional story, but we try to bring topical elements into it this year.
And you mentioned that you do this actually in St Albans town centre, so outside potentially pubs and your fundraising and.
Yeah, we do it Boxing Day every year. We do, I think it's 5 performances, various outdoor locations, several of which are outside pubs, so they're always great fun, and they usually reward us with a pint or two, which is nice. And we also do a fundraising collection. We raise quite a bit of money. So generally each year, we reckon about 2,000 people end up watching us over the 5 performances.
Wow. And you raise a few shillings.
And we raise a few shillings for we choose local charity or local charities.
Great. And what was so your folks were clearly creative and acting, singing, and very musical. Where did the sort of the technology bug and the physics, which is where you obviously got your degree in from Nottingham, where what's the genesis for that? Where did that come from?
I don't know. I have no idea genetically where it came from, but I always enjoyed maths, and from that, the sort of applied side of maths, physics, technology. I always enjoyed technology. I can't pin down any specific thing that made me think, technology is my thing. It was just a gradual thing that I was good at, to be honest. I went along and did A-levels in because I was good at it, at science. And I thought, I quite enjoyed this. So I went and did a degree in physics, which again, I quite enjoyed. But I always found that I much preferred reading and writing about science to the actual sort of getting your hands dirty doing it.
Okay.
So after I graduated, I spent a few months looking around, and that's when I saw a job advertised for a patent attorney, which essentially is a combination of science, and you need quite a bit of in-depth knowledge of your particular science and the law. And I thought this sounds interesting, so I went along for an interview, and things went on from there.
And here we are, 2018.
Yes.
Being at Dolleymores for the good part of since 1989.
Yeah.
So prolific career. So that's fantastic. And along the way, again, a question that I always ask was a combination of, has there been ever, an embarrassing mistake that you've potentially learned from, professionally, or just some insightful sort of business knowledge that we can pass back to the listeners. So which would you prefer? Would you prefer the embarrassing story or the more serious one? What would you want?
I think I can sort of combine the two, actually.
Okay, go on.
As I've said earlier, we do a lot of work in Japan, and I go over to Japan quite often, at least once a year.
Okay.
And one thing in businesses that I've learned in Japan, but also in other countries, is make sure you are fully aware of the culture and the etiquette of who you're talking to. Japan in particular, the whole etiquette of dealing with Japanese people, not offending them, the treating their business card with utmost respect, that kind of thing.
Yes.
That if you don't do that, you could be in trouble. You particularly in Japan, they won't necessarily tell you straight away, but you could well be in trouble. And once I was actually in Japan, just walking down the street, and there was this very frail old lady, rather stooped, rather bent, walking very slowly, and she dropped something, and I immediately went to pick it up for her. It just seemed polite. And
you're a gentleman.
It's absolutely, yes. It's what you do. Now, because I'd done that for her, her culture, her etiquette said she had to thank me. And the way she could thank me was by bowing, because the Japanese are very big in bowing.
But she's frail.
She's very old, very frail, very bent over. And there's various levels of bowing in Japanese culture. And this meant I was a sort of Western guy in a suit. So it meant she had to give me a big, respectful bow. And I saw the poor lady try to bow, and it was extremely painful for her and difficult.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, I really shouldn't have done that. I put her through more pain and aggro than letting her
by being a gentleman and picking up.
And that kind of, I learned a lesson from then of, try to learn the culture and the etiquette and of where you're going and who you're dealing with.
Yeah, fantastic bit of advice. Thank you. That's a very good story. Thank you. So as we draw to a close of the interview, again, thanks so much for coming on, John, and we'll, without any doubt, want to get you back on again in due time, certainly to talk through any sort of projects or developments that you think our listeners should be aware of.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Nationally, but also potentially globally. Clearly a lot of businesses here have, global connections commercially, so, more knowledge that we can share for free, which is what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
The best, so thanks. One thing I'm definitely asking everybody, and I sort of teed you up for this earlier, was, bit of knowledge for me. So, fantastic story about Japan and culture. So that's invaluable. Anything else that you could share with me that you think, from whether it be sort of lifestyle and something fun and profound, or something professionally, what have you got there as pearls of wisdom you could pass on?
I think just keep your sense of humour, really. It's something that, no matter how dark something seems or how badly something's going, if you can at least try to raise keep some sort of sense of perspective and sense of humour about it, you'll go a long way. Yeah, I would. Yeah, entirely agree. I think whether it be professionally or personally, sometimes you can come up against hurdles, can't you? And I think, as you've said, the way to do it is rise above it and laugh and try and see the funny side, which is why I also like asking the question about embarrassing stories. Sure.
Because, obviously what we're talking about here, commercially and business and tech and engineering, can be quite serious. So, without a doubt, we've got to.
And always count to 10 before you reply to something, or reply to an email that may be less than complimentary. Always do that. Never ever just reply without at least taking a breath.
Yeah, that's very, very good advice. I think I used to certainly do that a lot when I was a lot younger. Responding far too quickly instead of just walking away from the computer, as you said, for 10 seconds, but for maybe 5-10 minutes to calm down.
Yes.
So, very sage advice. So, great. Okay, so basically that's the end of the podcast. So what I will be asking John to do is to provide us any links that he can, which we'll put in the show notes, so that anybody wanting to reach out to John for whatever reason can do so. But also, if that's okay, John, you can provide us a couple of links where people can do some of their own very basic ground level checks from a sort of brand perspective and what have you, ahead of potentially then engaging with you or and an expert for what it is that you guys cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's okay. And as we say at the end, and as you'll hear me say in a moment, pre-recorded, the way that our podcast grows is through sharing, but also through 5-star reviews on iTunes. So, John, I'll be very cheeky in asking yourself and your colleagues to obviously do that, naturally, as you will do. And also for you, dear listener, please go through the links in the show notes to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating. It would mean the world to us. John, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it's a Friday afternoon and you now want to get back to the office or go home, so I will let you leave, but hopefully, as I said, we can get you on in the future again.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure, and thanks so much.
Pleasure. John, speak soon. The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.